I'm delighted to be joined, as ever, by Super Bowl winning head coach Brian Billick in association with X-Tech Pads. Coach, how are you doing? Are you stuck to the news like the rest of us?
Trying to not really watch it right now. I'm going to go about my business, maybe talk a little football.
Absolutely. I know Will was up most of the night watching it, so you've got someone who's a bit more fresh faced, ready to talk football. And yeah, focusing on a kind of recurring theme for the Los Angeles Chargers, unfortunately. 24-3 up against the Broncos on Sunday. 21-point lead in the third quarter, yet for the fourth week in a row, they blow a lead of 16 points or more. That's the fifth time this season they've lost a double-digit lead, and they're 2-5. When this continually happens over and over again, how much blame has to lie at head coach Anthony Lynn and his staff's door?
Well, you may not be responsible, but you're going to be held accountable because that's basically, you're right. When you've got that kind of lead, it is a team mentality. It falls on the coaches to make sure that the offense and defense are coordinated in a way that when you have a lead, you're doing those things that can finish that game off. Not to say it was the offense's fault. And Herbert, they had a great game going. He had a good game going. Then he threw a couple picks, and he probably put the ball in. One really wasn't his fault, but maybe that's, again, part of his maturation process of, okay, do I really need to make this throw? What's the cost, risk, benefit ratio of making a throw here as opposed to maybe throwing it away or taking the sack? But yeah, clearly, I mean, they've got a great young talent in Herbert. They've got to feel good about themselves. But I got to believe Coach Lynn is on a bit of a hot seat. I think ownership, particularly when you have these reoccurring themes. And for the players, the difficulty is, and you can go back and you'll look at the film and you'll try to dissect what went wrong. But it's hard now emotionally that when you get into a game and things are going well, and all of a sudden that bad thing happens, for the players not to, it's only human nature to go, oh boy, here we go again. And then that can kind of cascade itself into reoccurring problems. So that's probably the biggest challenge for Coach Lynn right now.
That psychology side of it is huge. And I know that when you were in Baltimore that 2000 season, you kind of banned the players from mentioning the P word, playoffs, and then Super Bowl when you're in the mix for that. I mean, was that kind of psychological tactic that you use to try and affect players' mental mind when they're going into these games?
Yeah, you try to set a theme, an understanding of, okay, what is it going to take to beat this team? We have to stop the run. We have to come up with big plays. We have to get turnovers, whatever it is. And you do that on Wednesday morning when you have that opening meeting. And you readdress it, you kind of touch on it. And then Saturday night is your final, okay, this is what we said we had to do, just to kind of bring that final focus. And it was interesting for me to hear the players, whether it was via the media or just talking, if they were, mentioning that, if they were regurgitating that, if you will, and saying, okay, they're getting the message here. This is what we have to do. And that will be part of it. Now, it's kind of like a guy that has a fumbling problem. You don't want to just talk about fumbling all the time, because then that's all they're thinking about. The same with the players. You don't want to address it to the point where that's all they're thinking about. Oh my gosh, are we gonna fall apart again? Are we gonna fall apart again? But there is some psychology to it in helping the players through it, and you just got to get through it. You just got to get that game where you have the lead and you hold on to it and win. Now the rest of that can go by the wayside, but you got to get that first one.
Let's move on to Baltimore and that game on Sunday against the Steelers. I mean, the Ravens offense put up over 450 yards of offense, twice as much as the Steelers, and they come away losing the game, which is going to hamper their chances of winning that AFC North massively. There is a knock on Lamar Jackson at the minute that he can't win these big games. We saw the playoff loss to Tennessee, the loss to the Chiefs earlier in the season, and this loss as well. He's had 8 turnovers combined in those 3 games, and his passer rating's 66 when his career passer rating's down at 100. What do you kind of see from Lamar in these big games, and what can Greg Roman and him do to kind of get over that hump?
Well, and there is a little bit of panic, like, oh my gosh, is he falling apart, or is he not what we thought he was? And a little bit that's unfair. I mean, if your benchmark is what he did last year, and anything less than 30 plus touchdowns and all those yards and 170 carries and all the winning, that's a pretty high benchmark. Then you're probably going to come away disappointed most years, because that was quite a year. Having said that, yeah, he has 15 turnovers in his career. Half of them are against the Steelers. So clearly, whether it's the Steelers' zone blitz package, their zone drop package, the combination of the two, clearly have got him frazzled a little bit. And again, it's throwing from numbers outside. seems to be his problem from within the pocket. So that was a focus coming in. They wanted to be better. They're still playing pretty good, make no mistake. And that defense, like you said, Pittsburgh just gave up running the ball. They knew they couldn't do it. Only ran it like 16 times. They were successful throwing the ball, but that pick six to open the game and that interception to open the half kind of set a tone. And it was a big win for Pittsburgh in Baltimore to win on the road. Yeah, that's huge. And whether it's just the division, the psychological part of it, again, and they're the only undefeated team in the league right now with Pittsburgh. They're pretty good, and they're probably as complete a team as we have in the AFC right now. Kansas City, obviously, with that dynamic offense, and Baltimore's still pretty good too. But these three teams are clearly the best three teams, and to beat one of them on the road is substantial. And Baltimore, they'll dust themselves off. They got a big one against Indianapolis, who's kind of been sneaky good. I mean, they're 5-2. That game really is going to come down to how does Phillip Rivers play. That last game that they had was just the way they want to play. Ran it better than 30 times, over 100 yards. Phillip Rivers only had 30 throws, roughly 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Phillip Rivers, at the point of his career, the more he throws the ball, the more likely the interception is going to happen. If he's in a 40, 45 game throw, then that usually doesn't bode well. I'm not sure they're going to be able to run the ball. As we saw, the Steelers couldn't run a lick against the Ravens. I'm not sure Indianapolis is going to be able to. And if they have to keep up, if that offense kind of gets going, grinds up the clock, runs the ball, I'm talking about the Ravens now, then that might be ripe for Phillip Rivers to have one of those 40-plus throw, 2 or 3 interception games. That's what they have to stay away from.
And how do you see the Ravens offense matching up against that Colts defense? Because as you say, they're flying a little bit under the radar, but 11 interceptions, they lead the league, second against the run. DeForest Buckner's having a great year. Darius Leonard looks really good. That's a really good unit, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the turnovers that's the key. Coming off the 4 turnover game against the Steelers, that's got to be job one. Now, they're good enough to line up and run the ball. With the Steelers, they got to the point where we're not even going to try, and they just ran and almost got it done. Literally ran down the field to get into the score. Then Pittsburgh responded, got a score. And then once they got the ball back, the defense stopped on that 3rd and 2. They got the ball back. They moved down the field, got into that 3rd and long, and then obviously couldn't quite convert it. So they did run the ball very, very well. Like you said, they had over 400 yards of offense. And I think they'll be okay against the Colts. The key will be, obviously, they can't turn the ball over against a team that's as good as anybody in getting turnovers. Just
one final one on Lamar. Is this, well, as we were talking about with the Chargers, a psychological issue again, that he knows it's out there that he can't win the big game, and once he does go into one of these games and plays like we know he can do, then that monkey might be off his back, as it were?
Yeah, I don't know that he focuses on that a lot. They're going to hear that on the outside. They'll hold it at arm's length. They'll say they don't hear it, but they do. And Lamar's a pretty strong mentally individual. He's a young man, just loves the game. I don't think he's dwelling on it. But having said that, you got to win the big games. And whatever that definition it is of a big game, clearly when they get into the playoffs, let's remember how long it took Peyton Manning to win a playoff game eventually. So you got to keep it in context. But yeah, would it be defy human nature for them to not to be thinking about it all? Sure.
Let's move on finally to play calling and head coaches and their role with that. We've seen with the Jets the last 2 weeks that Adam Gase has given up the responsibility of offensive play calling to his offensive coordinator, Darryl Loggins. There's been media conversations about whether Mike McCarthy should take on the responsibility in Dallas from Kellen Moore. Matt Nagy's been asked whether he wants to give it up in Chicago, and there's been some discussion about whether Mike Vrabel's taken too much on his plate from the defensive side since they let go of Dean Pease. I'm wondering where you stand on whether head coaches should have that play calling responsibility in their area of expertise, be it offense or defense.
Yeah, I've done both, where I've relinquished it to a coordinator or called it myself. I really don't know that it makes that much difference. At the end of the day, your players have to play well. I don't think Mike McCarthy taking over play calling is going to make them necessarily any better, or whether it be Adam Gase or Matt Nagy. One of the things you do have to worry about, and I lived it as a head coach, that whatever that level of expertise is, we just saw it with Dan Quinn, who took over the play calling and took over the defense. They weren't very good. When you do that, as a head coach, you're held responsible for all the wins and losses. But if you're also calling plays now, you're going to be held responsible for all 1,300 plays that you're going to call. And every run should have been a pass. Every pass should have been a run. Every blitz should have been a zone. If it doesn't work, there does come a point in a vulnerability where the head coach, if you do take it over, and it's more a gesture to say, okay, I'm gonna take this thing over to try to get it right, than it is an actual, okay, we're going to be better now. You run the risk of, if it doesn't get better, then you've got the team and the fans and the owner going, well, this was your area of expertise. If you can't even do this, then why do we have you as our head coach? So there is a vulnerability in that that you've got to factor in. Ultimately, you're going to be held accountable anyway. But having said that, if there is, you can change up the pace of it, or sometimes it can make a difference if it just changes, even if it's a placebo and you do well and the players, oh, okay, yeah, we're okay now. And now you're off and running. But in each of those cases, I think it has more to do with the play that's going on the field. Obviously, the quarterback play in Dallas, until that gets solidified, I don't think it's going to make a difference. What's going on in Chicago, and they just can't seem to keep up with the defense. I don't know that them taking over the play calling is going to make a big difference.
I guess as a head coach, perhaps in the pressure ones like Adam Gase and Mike McCarthy, you kind of want to control as much as you want, so as much as you can, because if your position's under threat and you perhaps are going to get fired at the end of the year, you want to know you did everything possible yourself to make it a success.
And that's part of it. It's, hey, what the hell? I'll give it a shot here, and this is what I'm supposed to do. Get my guru card back, and I'm this offensive or defensive genius. But like I said, when that does happen, rarely does it make a difference. And that's when then you have a certain vulnerability, particularly if you're the head coach taking it over. Now, if you're relinquishing it to someone else, that's all well and good. But then that's still going to create questions. It's just, either way, it's not a healthy situation.
Absolutely. That's fantastic, Coach. Thank you so much for your time as ever. Love talking ball with you.
Sounds great.